Commander Park Wan had been drinking his morning coffee when the alarm started screaming. The bridge of the Aegis Star erupted into chaos as red warning lights bathed everything in bloody color. His mug shattered on the floor as he rushed to the main display. What he saw made his blood freeze. Earth hung in the void like a dying ember, its blue oceans reflecting the orange glow of burning continents. Massive explosions bloomed across the surface like deadly flowers, each one representing millions of lives snuffed out in an instant. "This can't be real," whispered Navigation Officer Song Minwoo, his face pale as death. The Earth's defense grid was supposed to be impenetrable, but it was real. The orbital defense platforms that had protected humanity's homeworld for centuries were nothing but glowing debris now. The massive ring of weapons satellites that had made Earth the most defended planet in human space had been swept away like leaves in a hurricane. "Commander, incoming transmission from Earth Defense Command," Communications Officer Lee Nari reported, her voice cracking with emotion. Her hands shook as she worked the controls. The holographic display flickered to life, showing Admiral Kim Taeho's face. The man who had been the pride of the Earth Defense Force now looked like a ghost. His uniform was torn, his face covered in soot and blood. Behind him, the command center shook violently as explosions rocked the planet's surface. All colonial fleets. "This is Admiral Kim," he gasped, struggling to stay upright as another blast sent him stumbling. "Earth has fallen. The Zephyrian Empire attacked without warning. They came out of nowhere with technology we've never seen before. Our defenses crumbled in minutes." Through the static, Park Wan could hear the sounds of battle in the background. Screaming soldiers, the whine of energy weapons, the rumble of collapsing buildings. The heart of human civilization was being torn apart. "They're not trying to conquer us," Admiral Kim continued, his voice growing weaker. "They're harvesting something. Taking our technology, our resources, our people. The cities are burning. New York is gone. London is gone. Tokyo is nothing but." Ash Park Wan felt sick. Those weren't just cities being destroyed, they were the dreams and hopes of billions of people. The museums that held humanity's greatest art, the libraries that contained their accumulated knowledge, the homes where children had taken their first steps. "I'm transmitting our tactical data," Admiral Kim said, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. "Learn from our mistakes, study their ships, find their weakness, make them pay for what they've done to our world." The transmission cut to static, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Park Wan stared at the screen, watching as the alien fleet continued its systematic destruction of Earth. The ships were beautiful in a terrifying way, sleek and silver, shaped like curved blades that seemed to cut through space itself. Moved with predatory grace, each one the size of a city. "How many ships?" Park Wan asked quietly. "Sensors count approximately 3,000 vessels," reported Sensor Officer Cho Hyenki. "Each one is twice the size of our largest battlecruiser. They're using some kind of energy weapon we've never encountered before." As they watched, one of the alien ships fired a beam of pure white light at the surface of Earth. Where it touched, everything simply vanished. Not destroyed, not burned, but erased as if it had never existed. A crater 5 kilometers wide appeared in seconds. "Sir, we're receiving emergency broadcasts from the colonies," reported Tactical Officer Yoon Jamin, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. "New Seoul Colony is mobilizing every ship they have. Busan Station is converting their mining fleet to military vessels. Jeju Outpost is arming their civilian transports." Park Wan nodded grimly. Across human space, the same scene was playing out. Families were saying goodbye to their loved ones. Farmers were abandoning their fields to pilot cargo ships armed with improvised weapons. Students were leaving their studies to become soldiers. "What about the other core worlds?" Park Wan asked. "Mars is intact but heavily damaged," Yoon Jamin replied. "The Zephyrians hit their defense grid but didn't stay to finish the job. Luna Colony is gone. They strip-mined it completely.
Ow.
Europa Station managed to hide behind Jupiter's radiation field. The alien fleet was already beginning to withdraw, their work complete. They had taken what they wanted, and left humanity's birth world a broken shell. But they had made one crucial mistake. They had left witnesses. Parquan activated the fleet-wide communication system. His voice carried across the void to every human ship in the Outer Rim, from massive battlecruisers to tiny scout vessels. All ships, this is Commander Park of the Outer Rim Defense Force. Today, humanity lost its heart. 12 billion souls, our mothers and fathers, our children and dreams, all gone in a single morning. Earth, the world that gave birth to our species, burns under alien fire. He paused, looking around at his crew. Every face showed the same mixture of grief and rage that he felt in his own heart. But we are not broken. We are not defeated. We are human beings, and we have survived ice ages and plagues, wars and disasters. We have crawled out of caves and reached for the stars. Today they think they have destroyed us, but they have only made us stronger. His voice grew louder, carrying the weight of humanity's fury. We will gather every ship, every weapon, every soul willing to fight. We will take our merchant vessels and turn them into weapons of war. We will take our mining ships and load them with nuclear fire. We will take our passenger liners and fill them with soldiers hungry for justice. The response was immediate. Across the communication channels, voices began to answer, captains pledging their ships, entire colonies offering their resources, millions of people volunteering to fight. The Zephyrians will learn something about humanity today, Parquan concluded. We do not forgive. We do not forget. And we do not give up. They wanted to harvest our world, but they have harvested the whirlwind instead. As the alien fleet disappeared into hyperspace, carrying their stolen prize, they left behind something they had not expected. They left behind a species united in purpose for the first time in centuries. They left behind 900 million humans who would not rest until justice was served. The greatest armada in galactic history was about to be born from the ashes of Earth. 2 years had passed since the burning of Earth, and the sight before Admiral Oh Seung-jin was beyond anything humanity had ever imagined. 900,000 vessels stretched across the darkness of space like a metal constellation, each ship a testament to human rage and determination. The fleet was so massive that it took 3 hours just to fly from one end to the other at maximum speed. Admiral Oh stood on the bridge of the Vengeance of Terra, a battlecruiser that had been built from the wreckage of Earth's orbital shipyards. Every piece of metal in her hull had once been part of humanity's homeworld, making her more than just a ship. She was a flying memorial, a weapon forged from grief itself. Fleet status report, he commanded, his voice carrying the weight of 2 years of planning and preparation. Captain Han Soyoung, a veteran who had lost her entire family on Earth, consulted her datapad with practiced efficiency.
All divisions.
Report ready, Admiral. We have 50,000 military vessels, 200,000 converted merchant ships, and 650,000 civilian craft armed with whatever weapons we could manufacture. The numbers were staggering, but the real miracle was what humanity had accomplished in just 24 months. Every colony had contributed something to the war effort. Mars had converted its entire industrial base to weapon manufacturing. The asteroid miners had turned their rock crushers into ship-mounted cannons. Even the luxury resort stations had donated their pleasure craft to the cause. Admiral Oh walked to the massive viewport and gazed out at the incredible sight. The fleet was a patchwork of humanity's determination and ingenuity. Sleek luxury yachts that once carried wealthy tourists now bristled with missile pods welded to their hulls. Massive cargo haulers that had moved grain between worlds were now fitted with railguns, powerful enough to punch through a moon. Even the great passenger liners, those floating cities that had carried millions of settlers to new worlds, now mounted torpedo tubes where their ballrooms used to be. Sir, take a look at this, called Engineering Officer Park Dong-soo, pointing to a section of the fleet. The Paradise Lost just finished her conversion. She used to be a cruise ship with swimming pools and shopping malls. Now she's carrying enough nuclear warheads to crack a planet. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Humanity had taken everything that represented peace and prosperity and turned it into instruments of war. Wedding chapels had become armories. Dance floors had become training grounds. Swimming pools had been drained and filled with ammunition. "What about the civilian volunteers?" Admiral O asked. "Every ship has a full crew," Captain Han replied. "We've got grandmothers manning gun turrets and teenagers piloting fighter craft. Yesterday, I watched a retired chef test fire a plasma cannon he'd installed on his food truck. The man used to serve noodles on Luna Colony. Now he's ready to serve death to the Zephyrians." The most incredible part wasn't the ships themselves, but the people who crewed them. These weren't professional soldiers. They were farmers and teachers, shopkeepers and artists, people who had never fired a weapon in anger, but were now ready to cross the galaxy for revenge. Every single person in the fleet had lost someone on Earth. Every single one had a reason to fight. "Sir, we've completed the hyperspace calculations," reported Navigator Choi Min-ho, his fingers dancing across the holographic display. Admiral O nodded grimly. For 2 years, humanity's best scientists had worked around the clock to track the enemy fleet. They had followed radiation signatures, analyzed hyperspace distortions, and interrogated every piece of wreckage left behind. The trail led to a star system on the far edge of the galaxy, where the Zephyrians had built their empire. "Signal all ships," Admiral Lowe commanded. "Today we begin the journey that will end with justice for Earth. Every man, woman, and child who died in that attack will be avenged." The Zephyrians thought they could destroy us and walk away. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The response was immediate and overwhelming. 900,000 ships acknowledged the order simultaneously, their combined voices creating a roar that could be heard across 3 star systems. Fighter pilots revved their engines. Gun crews loaded their weapons. Soldiers checked their equipment one final time. The massive fleet engaged their hyperspace drive simultaneously. The light show was visible from 3 star systems away as 900,000 ships vanished into the void, carrying humanity's wrath toward their enemies. Space itself seemed to tear apart as the largest military force in galactic history disappeared into the cosmic tunnel that would carry them to their destiny. During the long journey through hyperspace, the fleet prepared for war. Brought new training exercises and weapon tests. Fighter pilots practiced attack runs in virtual reality simulators, so realistic that many came out sweating and shaking. Engineers worked around the clock to modify weapon systems, squeezing every bit of destructive power from their improvised arsenal. The most touching moments came when the older crew members told stories of Earth to those who had never seen their homeworld. In the mess halls and recreation areas, veterans would describe the blue skies that stretched from horizon to horizon, the green forests that covered entire continents, the mighty oceans that sparkled under the sun. Lieutenant Shin Haijin, a fighter pilot born on Mars, listened to these stories with tears in her eyes. She had grown up under the red sky of humanity's first colony, breathing recycled air and drinking processed water. Earth had always been just a name to her, a distant world she might visit someday. "Tell me about the rain," she whispered to Sergeant Kim Jae-wook, an old soldier who had spent his youth in the forests of Korea. "Rain," the sergeant said softly, his eyes distant with memory, "was like a gift from heaven. It would fall from the sky like tiny diamonds, washing the world clean. You could smell it coming hours before it arrived. And afterwards, everything would be fresh and new, like the world had been reborn. We'll make them pay for taking that away from us," Shin Haijin whispered, her hands clenching into fists. All across the fleet, similar conversations were taking place. Parents told their children about playgrounds where kids could run without breathing masks. Lovers described beaches where they could walk barefoot on real sand. Artists painted pictures of sunsets that had colors no artificial light could match. The Zephyrians had stolen more than just a planet. They had stolen 1 billion childhood memories, 1 million first kisses, the dreams of an entire species. They had also created something they never expected, a united humanity with a single purpose. 47 days later, the fleet would arrive at their destination, and the Zephyrians would learn that some crimes could never be forgiven. The moment the human armada dropped out of hyperspace, every weapon in the fleet was armed and ready. 900,000 ships emerged from the cosmic tunnel like an unstoppable tide of metal and fury. Admiral Oh Sungjin had spent 47 days imagining this moment, picturing the massive battle that would finally give humanity its revenge. But what he saw made his blood run cold. "Admiral, you need to see this," called Sensor Officer Park Dongwoo, his voice cracking with confusion and terror. "This isn't what we expected. Something's very wrong here." The main display flickered to life, showing the Zephyrian home system in all its glory. Zephyr Prime hung in space like a jewel, its surface covered in gleaming cities that sparkled like diamonds. The planet should have been protected by thousands of silver warships, same blade-shaped vessels that had destroyed Earth. Instead, Admiral O saw something that made his stomach turn. The planet was under attack, but not by human forces. Massive, grotesque ships surrounded Zephyr Prime like vultures around a dying animal. These weren't the clean, technological vessels that both humans and Zephyrians used. These things looked alive, like giant organs ripped from some cosmic beast. Their hulls pulsed with veins of sickly green light, and where they moved, space itself seemed to writhe in disgust. "What in the hell are those things?" whispered Captain Lee Junisu, his face pale as he stared at the nightmare unfolding before them. The organic ships moved with a horrible, fluid motion that hurt to watch. They didn't fly through space so much as swim through it, their surfaces, rippling like diseased skin. Some were the size of cities, others as large as moons. All of them radiated a sense of wrongness that made every human in the fleet feel sick just looking at them. "Sir, the Zephyrian fleet," reported Tactical Officer Yoon Jaemin, his voice barely above a whisper. "They're not fighting us. They're fighting those things, and they're losing badly." The once mighty Zephyrian fleet was scattered across the system like broken toys. The proud silver ships that had seemed so invincible when they burned Earth were now fleeing in terror from the organic monstrosities. As Admiral O watched, one of the bioships extended what looked like a massive tentacle toward a Zephyrian cruiser. Where the tentacle touched the ship, the metal simply dissolved. Not melted, not destroyed, but absorbed. The entire vessel was consumed in seconds, leaving nothing behind but empty space and the horrible satisfaction that seemed to radiate from the organic predator. "My God," breathed Communications Officer Kim Min-young. "They're eating them. Those things are actually eating the ships." Admiral O felt his carefully planned revenge crumbling around him. For 2 years he had dreamed of this moment. He had imagined the glorious battle where humanity would finally make the Zephyrians pay for what they had done to Earth. Instead, he was watching his enemies be devoured by something even worse. "Sir, we're intercepting Zephyrian communications," Kim Min-young reported, her hands shaking as she worked the controls. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies. They're calling for help." "Put it through," Admiral O commanded, his voice tight with anger and confusion. The hologram that appeared on the bridge showed a Zephyrian commander, but not the proud, arrogant aliens that had destroyed Earth. This creature looked broken, desperate. His usually pristine uniform was torn and bloodied, his face marked with burns and cuts. Behind him, the command center was in chaos as explosions shook the ship. "Unknown human fleet," the alien gasped, struggling to stay upright as another blast rocked his vessel. "But you must understand, we are all in danger now. The Devourers have returned." "Devourers?" Admiral O spat, his voice filled with contempt. "You destroy our world, murder 12 billion people, and then expect us to care about your problems? You want our help now that something bigger and badder has come for you?" "You don't understand," Veltar pleaded, his alien features twisted with desperation. "We didn't attack your world for conquest or glory. We attacked because we were desperate. We needed your technology, your raw materials, your energy sources, to fight against these creatures. They consume entire civilizations. We've already taken 12 systems in our space." The display changed, showing images that made every human in the fleet gasp in horror. Planets stripped completely bare, their surfaces crawling with organic growths that pulsed with alien life. Space stations dissolved into their component atoms, their metal and energy absorbed by the hungry bioships. Entire fleets of ships simply vanishing, consumed by creatures that treated technology like food. Look. At Kepler 442, Veltar continued, his voice breaking. 15 billion Zephyrians live there. Now it's nothing but a ball of organic matter. The Devourers don't just kill civilizations, they eat them, consume everything. The buildings, the ships, the people, even the planet itself. Admiral O stared at the horrifying images, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. One of the planets shown had been stripped down to its core, its surface covered in writhing, organic material that pulsed with alien hunger. Another world had been partially consumed, with massive chunks bitten out of its surface like someone had taken bites from an apple. The worst part, Veltar continued, is that they're getting stronger. Every world they consume makes them more powerful. Every ship they eat adds to their fleet. Every person they devour becomes part of their collective consciousness. Not just conquering the galaxy, they're becoming the galaxy. Captain Han Soyoung stepped forward, her voice filled with barely controlled rage. So you decided to throw us to them first? You thought if you fed them Earth, they'd leave you alone? We hoped to buy time, Veltar admitted, his shame evident. Even across the species barrier, we thought if we could gather enough resources, enough technology, we could find a way to stop them. But we were wrong. They're too strong, too numerous. And now they're here. As if summoned by his words, the largest of the bioships turned toward the human fleet. It was the size of a small moon, its surface covered in what looked like millions of eyes. When it focused on the human armada, every person in the fleet felt a chill run down their spine. If we fall, Veltar continued, his voice growing weaker as his ship took more damage, your colonies are next. The Devourers won't stop until every world is consumed. They can't be reasoned with, they can't be bargained with. They exist only to feed, and they're always hungry. Admiral Lo looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. These were people who had come halfway across the galaxy for revenge, who had spent 2 years preparing to destroy their enemies. Now, they faced a choice that would determine the fate of not just humanity, but all life in the galaxy. The creatures that had destroyed Earth were being destroyed themselves by something infinitely worse. And if the Zephyrians fell, humanity would face these Devourers alone. The greatest armada in human history had come for revenge. But they might have arrived just in time to save the galaxy itself. In his private quarters aboard the Vengeance of Terra, Admiral Oh Sung-jin sat alone in the darkness, staring at the tactical displays that showed the nightmare unfolding outside. The room was silent, except for the hum of the ship's engines and the distant sound of his crew preparing for a battle they had never imagined fighting. His senior staff had gathered around the holographic table, faces grim as they studied the data that would change everything. Intelligence Officer Yoon Soo-min was the first to speak, her voice steady despite the horror of what she was reporting. Aspherians are telling the truth, sir, she said, pulling up scan results that made everyone in the room shudder. Our deep scans confirm it. These Devourers are unlike anything we've encountered. They're not just destroying the Zephyrian fleet, they're consuming it. Watch this. The display showed a Zephyrian battleship being attacked by one of the bioships. The organic creature extended what looked like a massive mouth, lined with rows of teeth that weren't made of bone, but of some kind of living metal. The Zephyrian ship fired everything it had, but the weapons simply passed through the creature's body without causing any damage. The bioship doesn't just destroy the vessel, Yoon Soo-min continued. It absorbs every atom of metal, every bit of energy, even the crew members themselves. In 30 seconds, a ship that took years to build becomes part of the creature's mass. Captain Han So-young pulled up additional data, her hands shaking slightly as she worked the controls. Sir, we've detected traces of these creatures in 17 different systems. They leave nothing behind. No debris, no ruins. Just empty space where planets used to be. The tactical display showed a map of the galaxy with red dots marking the systems that had been consumed. The pattern was clear and terrifying. The Devourers were working their way through space like a plague, leaving a trail of emptiness behind them. Look at this, Captain Han said, highlighting one of the red dots. This was the Rigel system. 4 planets, 2 billion inhabitants, major industrial centers. Now there's nothing there but empty space and a few scattered asteroids. Studied the information with growing horror. Each red dot represented countless lives lost, entire civilizations erased from existence. The Zephyrians had destroyed Earth, but these creatures were destroying everything. "How long do we have?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Navigator Choi Minho ran the calculations on his computer, his face growing paler with each number. Based on their consumption rate, they'll finish with the Zephyrian homeworld in 6 hours. They'll move on to the next system. Our closest colony is 12 light years away. Mars, Admiral O said quietly. They'll hit Mars next. The thought sent a chill through everyone in the room. Mars was humanity's first colony, home to 2 billion people. It was where many of the crew members had been born, where their families still lived. If these creatures reached Mars, humanity would lose another world. Sir Lieutenant Colonel Bei Hyojin spoke up, his voice tight with anger. With respect, this doesn't change what they did to Earth. Billions of our people are dead because of them, my wife, my children. They died in the Sol District when the Zephyrians attacked. Why should we help the bastards who murdered our families? The room fell silent. Everyone understood his pain because they all shared it. Every person in the fleet had lost someone on Earth. They had traveled across the galaxy for revenge, and now they were being asked to save their enemies instead. "You're right, Admiral," O said quietly. "This doesn't change what they did to Earth. Nothing can bring back the dead or heal the wounds they caused. But it changes what we do next." He stood up and walked to the viewport, looking out at the massive human fleet that stretched across space. 900,000 ships, each one crewed by people who had come here for justice. Now he had to ask them to fight for something bigger than revenge. "Computer, activate fleet-wide communication system," he commanded. All ships. "This is Admiral O," he began, his voice carrying to every vessel in the armada. "I know you came here for revenge. I know you want to see the Zephyrians burn for what they did to Earth. I want that too. Every fiber of my being screams for justice, for blood, for the satisfaction of watching our enemies suffer as we have suffered." He paused, looking around at his staff. "But we face a choice that will define what humanity becomes. We can have our revenge and watch the galaxy die, or we can put aside our hatred and fight for the survival of all life." The response was immediate and heated. Communication channels exploded with voices as 900,000 people reacted to his words. Some demanded blood for blood, shouting that the Zephyrians deserved no mercy. Others argued for strategic retreat, saying it wasn't humanity's fight. The debate raged for several minutes before Admiral O spoke again. "I understand your anger," he said. "I feel it too, but look at what we're facing. These creatures don't just want to conquer, they want to consume everything. If we let them finish with the Zephyrians, they'll come for us next. They'll come for Mars, for the outer colonies, for every human settlement in the galaxy." Fighter pilot Shin Haijin's voice came over the com from her squadron, cutting through the angry voices. "Admiral, I've been listening to the arguments, and I keep thinking about something. My grandmother used to tell me stories about Earth's oceans, about how blue and beautiful they were. She said that when the sun set over the water, it looked like the whole world was on fire." Her voice grew stronger. "Those oceans are gone now. That beauty is gone forever. But there are other worlds out there with other oceans, other sunsets. If we don't stop these things here, who will? Earth is gone, but we can still save everyone else." Other voices began to join her. Captain Park Jun-ho, from the converted cargo ship New Hope, spoke up. "My ship used to carry grain to feed the colonies. Now it's armed with enough firepower to level a city. I didn't come here to watch the galaxy die. Came here to make sure my daughter has a future to live in." Engineer Kim Yen-woo from the battleship Righteous Fury added his voice.
The Zephyrians
"Took our world, but these devourers want to take everything. If we run now, we'll spend the rest of our lives running. Better to make a stand here." Slowly, a consensus emerged. The fleet that had come for revenge was choosing to fight for survival instead. Not just their own survival, but the survival of every living thing in the galaxy. All vessels prepare for combat, Admiral O commanded, his voice carrying across the void to 900,000 ships. But not against the Zephyrians. Today we fight alongside our enemies to face a greater threat. Today we choose to be more than victims seeking vengeance. Today we choose to be the guardians of all life. The transformation was immediate and incredible. Ships that had been preparing to fire on Zephyrian vessels now turned their weapons toward the bioships. The greatest armada in human history was about to fight its first battle not for revenge, but for the future of the galaxy itself. The moment the combined human Zephyrian fleet moved into battle formation, space erupted into chaos. 900,000 human ships alongside 300,000 surviving. Zephyrian vessels faced off against nearly 4 million bioships that writhed through the void like living nightmares. The odds were impossible, but somehow that made the fight feel right. Human vessels. This is Commander Veltar, came the transmission from the battered Zephyrian command ship. Your plasma weaponry is more effective against their organic hulls than our energy beams. We'll provide shield support while you close for attack runs. Admiral O looked around his bridge at faces that had been filled with hatred just hours before. Now those same people were working alongside their former enemies, united by something greater than revenge. Tell all ships to focus fire on the largest bioship, he commanded. If these things have a command structure, that has to be it. The creature he was pointing at defied description. It was the size of a small moon, its surface covered in what looked like millions of eyes that tracked every movement of the Allied fleet. Massive tentacles writhed from its body, each one capable of crushing a battleship. But most terrifying of all were the mouths, thousands of them, lined with teeth that seemed to be made of living metal. All fighters launch, Admiral O ordered. Show these things what humanity is made of. The response was immediate and overwhelming. 50,000 fighter craft poured from the human fleet like angry wasps, their engines screaming as they accelerated. Toward the bioships, leading the charge, was Lieutenant Shin Haijin, the Mars-born pilot who had never seen Earth's blue skies, but was willing to die for the memory of them. Phoenix Squadron, follow my lead, she shouted into her cum, her fighter dancing between the grasping tentacles of a bioship. These things killed Earth, but they're not getting anything else. The bioships responded with attacks that seemed to come from every direction at once. Streams of acid that could melt through hull plating in seconds. Energy weapons that didn't just destroy ships, but absorbed them completely. Worst of all were the boarding pods' organic projectiles that burrowed into ships and released creatures. That consumed the crew from the inside, but humanity had learned to fight dirty during their expansion across the galaxy. And the Zephyrians brought technological superiority that, combined with human creativity, created devastating new tactics. The converted cargo ships revealed their true purpose as they opened their holds and released clouds of nuclear mines. The luxury yachts used their speed and agility to dart between the bioships, planting explosive charges on what looked like nerve clusters. "This is Captain Lee Junesio of the cargo fleet," came a voice over the comm. "We've got a present for these ugly bastards. All ships, prepare for ramming speed." Admiral O watched in horror and pride as dozens of converted freighters accelerated directly toward the largest bioships. These weren't military vessels, they were grain haulers and passenger transports, crewed by farmers and shopkeepers who had volunteered for what they knew was a suicide mission. "Ram the bastards," Captain Lee shouted, and his ship, the Honest Prophet, slammed into the side of a bioship at maximum velocity. The nuclear mines in his cargo hold detonated, tearing a hole the size of a city in the creature's flank.
Another bioship.
Scream of pain echoed across all frequencies, a sound that made every human in the fleet shudder. The battle raged for hours, with both sides taking terrible losses. The bioships were incredibly tough, their organic hulls regenerating damage almost as fast as it was inflicted.
Ow.
But they had never faced an enemy like humanity. A species that turned everything into a weapon and never knew when to quit. Engineer Park Jae-zoon, working frantically in the vengeance of Terra's engineering section, made the discovery that turned the tide. "Admiral, I've been analyzing the bioship remains, he reported, his voice crackling with excitement. Their organic hulls are vulnerable to a specific frequency of electromagnetic pulse, but we can't generate it with our current technology. What do you need? Admiral O asked. The Zephyrians have these crystal matrices in their weapon systems, Park explained. If we can combine them with our fusion reactors, we might be able to create the right frequency. But it's going to require direct cooperation between our engineering teams. Within minutes, human and Zephyrian engineers were working side by side, their hands moving over alien control systems as they modified weapons that had been designed to kill each other. The language barrier meant nothing when the survival of both species was at stake. We've got it, Park announced. All ships, modify your weapons to frequency 2847.3 terahertz. This should disrupt their cellular structure at the molecular level. All vessels, you heard the man, Admiral O commanded. Light them up. The effect was immediate and devastating. The modified weapons tore through the bioship's defenses like they were made of paper. The creatures that had seemed invincible minutes before now writhed in agony as their organic hulls began to dissolve. The largest bioship, the moon-sized monster that had been directing the attack, let out a scream that shattered windows on ships 3 light minutes away. Fighter pilot Shin Haijin dove toward the dying creature, her weapons blazing. "This is for Earth," she screamed, as she fired her entire payload into what looked like a massive nerve cluster. "This is for every world you've consumed. This is for every life you've stolen." The creature's death scream echoed across all frequencies, a sound of pure agony that seemed to drive the other bioships into a frenzy. But their rage made them sloppy, and the combined fleet pressed their advantage. Human fighters darted between the Zephyrian capital ships, using their superior speed and maneuverability to target the bioships. Weak points, while the aliens provided covering fire. The tide had turned, but the battle was far from over. Devourers were ancient and cunning, and they had survived by adapting to every threat they encountered. As the Allied fleet pressed their attack, the bioships began to merge together, combining their mass and strength into even larger, more terrifying forms. Their learning Admiral O realized with growing horror, they're adapting to our weapons. Humanity had one advantage that the Devourers couldn't adapt to: the refusal to give up. As the bioships grew larger and stronger, the human fleet simply found new ways to hurt them. Suicide runs became coordinated mass attacks. Individual heroics became fleet-wide strategies. The chaos of battle became the symphony of species fighting for their very survival. The final moment came when the last of the massive bioships, creature that dwarfed even the largest human battleship, made one last desperate charge toward the Allied fleet. Its surface was covered in wounds that leaked some kind of organic fluid, and its movements were erratic, like a wounded animal. "All ships concentrate fire," Admiral O ordered. "End this nightmare." 900,000 human weapons and 300,000 Zephyrian energy beams focused on a single target. The bioship's scream cut off abruptly as it simply ceased to exist. Its organic matter scattered across space like cosmic dust. The silence that followed was deafening. For the first time in hours, space was quiet except for the background hum of ship engines and the occasional burst of static from damaged communication systems. The greatest battle in galactic history was over, and somehow, impossibly, life had won. Retriclod can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.